Welcome back to Recovery Demystified. My name's Early. I'll be your host. If you've felt left behind in the world of addiction recovery, you haven't quite found your place, you ain't left behind anymore because I'm coming back for you. I'm so excited to have y'all listening today. I am going to share with you my March reading and podcast list. So let's hop right into it. First on the list, I have The Red Road to Wellbriety in the Native American Way by White Bison, Inc. White Bison, Inc. is something that I've just found recently. I was doing some research into different indigenous-led movements historically and currently with addiction and recovery. And it's been really interesting that indigenous folks on this continent have started doing addiction recovery circles, like healing circles, 200 years before AA acted like they invented it. And there's like a really, really long traditional history of community-based healing and healing circles within indigenous cultures. And White Bison, Inc. is like a contemporary version of that. They have several different books. The one that I've got on here is The Red Road to Wellbriety. And wellbriety is a word that they invented to be in contrast to just sobriety. Sobriety being like an absence of substances. But wellbriety is like creating an entire new life of recovery where you are not just sober, but you are well. And they take the 12 steps and they're like, oh, actually in like a lot of indigenous cultures, being spiritual is like a huge foundational element of our wellness. So a spiritual program can work really well for indigenous folks, but they take the 12 steps and kind of turn them on their head and adapt them to be more appropriate culturally for indigenous folks. And this book also has other separate chapters about like helping loved ones or sobriety in the workplace. And they also talk a lot about sobriety within community. And they use this really beautiful metaphor of like taking a sick tree out of the forest and healing the tree. But if you replant the healed tree back into a sick forest, what do you think is going to happen? And that is like a metaphor for the need to heal an entire community and not just a need to heal one element of it that's obviously sick. And that resonated with me a lot because I definitely believe that everything's connected and nothing exists within a vacuum or within isolation. So I really enjoyed that book for that reason. I thought it was a great read. There was like, it covered a lot of different topics, and I personally don't think that anyone necessarily needs spirituality to become sober, but I think that if you, in your heart, want that as part of your journey, then I just think that everyone should do whatever they want. So this was a really great book. I would definitely recommend it. Second on my list is First in the Family by Jessica Hoppe. I heard her interviewed on Nzega Harris's podcast, and immediately I was like, whoa, I have got to get this book. She is a Honduran and Ecuadorian first-generation immigrant to the United States, I believe. And her book is like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the perfect recovery book because it's a memoir, but then she also is adding like historical context. She's adding in her analysis of AA. She's adding in society as a whole. And she just like, it's all just interwoven in this like kind of seamless, beautiful way in her book. She talks about how her dad in Honduras worked on some like agricultural job and how they used alcohol to sort of keep the workers complacent. She ties that back into history of slavery in the United States and how alcohol was used as a method of control then. She's telling her story, which is like really intense, and her story of addiction and recovery is, she had a lot going on there. And she's a really good writer, really good storyteller. She talks about her experience in AA, which I think like almost everyone who gets deep into their addiction like has close encounters or more with AA just because it's so ubiquitous. But she describes how like the 10th tradition perpetuates racism, and she just has like, I don't know, an outstanding analysis of all things addiction and recovery, and her book is excellent, and I would highly recommend it. Next on my list, I have the Anonymous Eskimo podcast by Ralph Sara. This one is discontinued, but all of the episodes are still archived. He is an indigenous person from Alaska who is in addiction recovery and used his podcast as a method of accountability for himself to keep himself sober. He interviews exclusively indigenous folks. And in addition to talking about addiction and recovery, they also talk about like missing and murdered indigenous women and like other topics that are of interest that need to be spoken about in regards to the Native community where he lives in Alaska. And then he also interviews indigenous folks from other places. I wish this podcast was still going on because it's really good. And unfortunately, yeah, it looks like the last episode came out a couple of years ago, but I dearly hope he picks it back up because it's a wonderful resource. The next one on my list is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel Kolk. So this one is not an addiction recovery book. It's a trauma healing book. So my theme for the support groups this month in March is trauma, personal and cultural, and how they affect our chances of getting an addiction and how they affect our chances of accessing resources for healing from our addiction. And this book is just like the flagship book on how suppressed trauma gets stored in our bodies and how it can manifest in our lives. And then it has like a lot of chapters on how different methods of healing from trauma. And there's like somatic methods, there's yoga, there's therapeutic methods that you can use with your clinician, your therapist. It's just like, I remember reading this book and being like, oh my God, like it was just a light bulb moment. And I know that there's like some criticisms, like it's not a perfect book. There's sort of like very frank, sudden discussions of like a sexual trauma that are really hard to hear. So I am exploring a couple of other recommendations that folks have had for me that are a good substitute or replacement for this book. But I just think that this one is as common as it is for a reason. And it's because it's an eye-opener on trauma, and it's a different way to view it, that it's held inside of our bodies and that it can also be released and be healed. So that's why I put it on our list. Because, yeah, addiction isn't just not being able to quit drinking. It is like not being able to quit drinking because we have suppressed trauma, and it's not being able to quit drinking because there's cultural trauma living like through epigenetics in our body. Like nothing exists in a vacuum, and everything in life and society and culture is like, and the earth is just it's all connected. So me recommending a book on a sobriety podcast that's not explicitly about sobriety, to me, makes perfect sense. Because we need to heal all parts of ourselves in order to be whole. The last one on my list is another podcast. It's called Sober Powered, The Neuroscience of Being Sober, by Gillian Tietz. And she is a biochemist and a person in addiction recovery. She takes science and makes it like approachable. She doesn't shy away from complex concepts, but it's not like impossibly technical to listen to. She's like really, really frank. She's really honest. And there's like a huge backlog of episodes on all different kinds of topics. It's all like very enlightening on how different parts of the brain respond to alcohol and addiction and different methods of healing yourself. And she just, she's very frank, very honest, and very technical, lots of science, lots of data, lots of research, but in a way that's approachable. You do have to fast forward through some ads on her podcast, but it's totally worth it. I really like her style, and I just really like, just using data and research and science and all of that kind of stuff to better understand ourselves in addiction, and like giving really, really practical, approachable methods to, after you start to understand yourself, find different ways to heal yourself. And she provides that, and I really like it. And my friends, that concludes the March Reading and Podcast List 2025. I hope that you can get some of these books or check out some of the podcasts on there. If you are in financial hardship, we have a free book program. If any of these books sound like something that you would be interested in, but you can't afford them, you can email info@recoverydemystified.com, and we'll be happy to buy that book for you. And if you are suffering this month, if you are just deep in the shit in your addiction, I need you to know that I love you. I need you to know that you are already whole. You are powerful. You have inner wisdom inside of you that pressed play on this podcast, and that inner wisdom is going to lead you to a life beyond your wildest dreams. My life used to be complete garbage, and trust me, I remember how fucking shitty it feels like, and it feels like it's impossible to get out of that deep, dark hole, but I promise you it can get better. You can do it. Start today, and you won't believe what happens in the future. I love you. You can do it. And that's all I have for you today, my dears. May you be happy and free. Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Petet made our logo. Our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. Logan Bragg wrote our beautiful theme music. We are entirely supported by donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. Your tax-deductible donations can be made to our Venmo or to our PayPal @Recovery Demystified. May you be happy and free, dear listener.